right, is everybody ready for 6? Ready? Everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order this meeting of July 24th for the Lynn Haven City Commission. If you would stand, please, for the invocation, and I'd like to ask Commissioner Barnes if he would lead us, please.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the blessings that you bestowed upon us. Lord, we just pray and ask that you will be with us in this meeting, that you will be with us as we conduct the business of the city. We pray, oh God, for our first responders. We pray and ask that you will be with them, that you will protect them. We pray for the troops that are overseas, that you will protect them, for those who are protecting us so that we can enjoy our freedoms here in this country. God, we just love you and we praise you. And we thank you for all the good things that you've done for us. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. At this time, our students from Mosley High School will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think it was Principal Hugh Tucker who used to say, once a dolphin, always a dolphin. And I had the pleasure of teaching there for about 10 years. And my daughter also graduated from there. And I believe our other Commissioner Barnes was also at Mosley High School for a time.
Administrative assistant.
So lots of dolphins in the commission room. At this time, item number 3 is the mayor's report. Just a few things to speak of tonight. I did meet with the city manager a couple of times this week. We discussed our millage rates, the budget hearings, and we also discussed his annual appraisal, which is a business of the commission at this time each year. I've attended the weekly paving and infrastructure meeting with the city employees, Panhandle Engineering and Phoenix Construction on Monday afternoons, just to stay apprised of our half-cent surtax and our SRF funding projects that are going on in Lynn Haven. I was very excited and honored this week. I accepted a nomination from the Northwest Florida Panhandle Girl Scout Council for their Women of Distinction Award for 2018. So honored to be one of those nominees, and I'll be at a luncheon with them this Friday at the St. Andrews Yacht Club, and then in August at their gala at Edgewater Resort. So very excited. I was a Girl Scout for a good part of my growing up life, and so that was especially just a sweet thing to happen. I was very excited. Also this week I met with city staff to discuss events and festivals scheduled for the coming months. We have a very animated and energetic community services department, and they are working very hard, all the way looking ahead to the Christmas parade, the Christmas tree lighting, the spring festival. So we have a lot going on in Lynn Haven, and we have some really hard-working employees who are making all that happen. Met with a resident regarding an issue with a sewage connection that was involved with the paving project, and I was able to sort of be a liaison with city manager and public works and the contractor, and they got right on that and got it fixed, and the resident was so happy, so thank you to all involved. And then I met with several other concerned residents on other matters, and they don't want those called out, so I'll leave that. And then tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, any of you who are able to be here, we have a great economic announcement to make here in the city. It's going to be a game-changing event. It's going to create jobs in Lynn Haven. And so if you're able to be here for that announcement in the morning, we'd love to see you here at 10 a.m. It's just a short ceremony, but very informative and worth your while to come to. Wish I could give more details this evening, but I can't. So, and then if all goes well, and I just want a special thank you to Greg Kidwell and all of his department, and with Bobby Baker and with Phoenix Construction and all those involved, GCC with the splash pad construction. If all goes well at the water test tomorrow, the sensor test on Thursday, and the health department certificate on Friday morning, we'll be having our grand opening for the splash pad next Wednesday, August the 1st at 10 a.m. So I hope that all of you will be there. I think the kids are very excited. That's going to give them a couple of weeks before school starts, and then they can come there in the afternoons and cool off. I hope none of them stay home to cool off, or we'll be in trouble, but it's going to be really, really pretty. And on that note, when I initially began the private fundraising for the splash pad, one of the categories had different categories of giving, and people were very generous. And one was a platinum sponsor, which would be a $25,000 and over with a park named after the benefactor. I would like to honor this initial fundraising letter, even though the city did pick up on top of the private fundraising later, by naming the splash pad at Kensall Park after James D. Finch, who is the contractor for the splash pads at both Kensall and Cane Griffin Parks. Mr. Finch contracted to build the parks for $200,000 each, which was our budgeted amount, and it was over $150,000 under the bids of other companies. In addition, he's donated equipment, labor, and time to improve the beach at Kensall Park for the enjoyment of our residents and to make the park more beautiful in time for the opening of the dog park and the splash pad. James Finch is a local contractor, but many of you may not know he's also a silent philanthropist who has consistently given to his hometown of Lynn Haven, in particular by sponsoring our beautiful fireworks displays for over 40 years in Lynn Haven, the ones that we're so famous for, sponsoring musical entertainment for the concerts in the parks. He's a principal sponsor for the building and for the activities at the ARC, the St. Andrews Center, for our very special adult population in Lynn Haven, for which we're so blessed. And for countless families, he has quietly assisted financially and with emergency transportation in our community during times of grief and illness. I've discussed this with the city manager, and even though he's met the qualifications for his name to be placed on this park, which I specified in the initial letter I sent to patrons, I just wanted to let the commission know and the public know before the ribbon cutting ceremony next Wednesday, and how fitting that I think it is. So thank you very much. That concludes the mayor's report. So I will, one thing I need to do before we go further, Commissioner Dan Russell is on vacation, and he did attempt to phone in this evening to participate by phone, and apparently that's not been able to happen this evening. It's not his fault. So I would entertain a motion at this time to excuse Commissioner Russell from this meeting.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? There appears to be none. Any objection or discussion from the public? Thank you. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so we will excuse Commissioner Russell, and if for some reason he comes on board, let us know, okay? And then I had one other item of business. I'm sorry, Commissioner Tender, I went ahead too quickly. I do have a proclamation. It's a very important proclamation to read this evening. Do I have anyone from the ADA here to accept the proclamation this evening? Our recipient is also ill, but I also wanted to mention another very special person. He passed away just a few months ago, and he was an American with disabilities, and just wanted everybody to remember him as I'm reading, and all those in our community who are disabled and who function at different levels. And if we could, be in prayer for them and know how much we support the disabled of our community, and we want to work even harder at making this community more accessible for everyone. So this proclamation, whereas on the 28th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, we recognize the act which has helped tear down barriers for millions of people living with disabilities. On this anniversary of important legislation, our nation underscores our commitment to ensuring that all individuals have an equal opportunity to realize their full potential. And whereas since July 24th, 2018, this historic legislation has provided a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. The ADA reflects our nation's faith in the promise of all individuals and helps to ensure that our nation's opportunities are more accessible to all. And whereas when President George H.W. Bush signed this groundbreaking act into law, it better enabled citizens with disabilities to participate fully in all aspects of life. Over the course of 2 decades, this act has made our schools and workplaces more welcoming, helped change attitudes that once seemed unchangeable, and expanded the opportunity for many exceptional Americans. And whereas the ADA is one of the most successful civil rights laws in our history and has been an essential part of countless American lives. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Margo Deal Anderson, as mayor of the city of Lynn Haven, Florida, do hereby proclaim July 24th, 2018 as a day of celebration in honor of the 28th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the city of Lynn Haven, and celebrate the progress that has been made toward full participation of people with disabilities in our community and society. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Lynn Haven to be affixed this 24th day of July 2018. very proud to read this. I'll make sure it gets to the organization, and I would like to dedicate this proclamation tonight to my dear friend Fred Strickland, who passed away this year from disabilities and a terrible cancer illness. Commissioner Tender, your report?
Okay. Well, I had a couple of situations with residents, and I've turned them over to the city manager. We had one resident request the solar speed sign, and I've also dealt with a few other issues on some yards that are yet to be cleaned up, and I think the city manager's taking care of that. And I also wanted to know, may I read a small message that I got concerning the parade, or would you rather I wait until later?
It's your report. You may do whatever
Okay.
you wish.
Well, I received an email today from a senior at Mosley, and she said, this is what she said: I know tonight that you and the other commissioners are voting on moving the Mosley Homecoming Parade, but as a Mosley graduate and a new voter, she had to throw that in, I urge you not to do so. The parade being on 77 is a tradition that goes back years and has been passed on from generation to generation. Also, the 4 lanes has kept it safe. She said kept it safe always, something that Florida Avenue would not be able to do or guarantee with only 2 lanes. Thank you. Anyway, I just wanted to read that from her because I was very impressed that she took the time to write to me. So that's really all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I received the same email, Commissioner Tender, so I agree with you. Commissioner Barnes, did you have a report?
Yes, I just want the commission to be aware of Commissioner Joe Ashbrook, who served this commission for about 10 years, lost his mother last week. So I just ask that you be in prayer for the family, because Joe was truly an asset to our city. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a couple of things, working through some residential issues, and also, again, just take the opportunity, and I met with a city manager on those and some other things, and again, just I appreciate him accommodating my schedule. Attended the Bark Park. We had a great turnout. Mayor did a great job as usual. Actually got to take my lab out there, and he enjoyed it, so we had a good time doing that. Met with the, as part of the TPO and being on the subcommittee of the TPO for the public transportation, I met with the architect to negotiate the contract that they had given us, and I just wanted to say thank you to Julie for such short notice of lining up the conference room for me. I moved that meeting to Lynn Haven so that I could go to the Bark Park. So I appreciate her doing that. All went well. Then we did have the meeting, the subcommittee met, and we went over the contract with the architect, so we did that. And then also, I'll be traveling again for the MPOAC on behalf of the TPO August the 2nd. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the city manager's report, item number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things to report on. One thing I want to run by the commission and see if anyone has any heartburn about it, due to the fact from so many citizens asking for more. We wanted to look at doing a fall concert series, get sponsors to help with that. So if you do not have any issues with us doing a fall concert series over in Sheffield Park like we did in the spring that was so well attended, the community services and communications departments would love to do that. It'd be a little shorter. It'd be about 6 weeks, so it'd be about 6 events instead of 8. But if y'all have any issues with that, please let me know.
Would you like that in the form of a motion?
Yeah.
That would be great.
I move that the city sponsor a fall concert in the Sheffield Park.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second that the fall concert series be approved, sponsored by the city of Lynn Haven. Is there any discussion or questions from the board? Any discussion or questions from the public? Okay, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the fall concert series stands approved, and I'm very happy about that because the entire staff did such a fabulous job on the spring concert series.
Thank you.
Hey, you want to go ahead with your?
To let you know, let the staff also know that we will be going out with a RFQ for our risk insurances that time of year again. That should be out in the paper on Sunday. because it takes several months to get all that in place. We'll be issuing the RFQ and bring it to your approval later on. Also, to let the citizens know and remind each of you, our visioning workshop was going to be July 31st in this room at 8 a.m., starting at 8 a.m. I appreciate y'all accommodating our schedule for that. We look for a great session and great feedback for y'all think the city needs to go in the future. With that, Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you. Item number 6 is the city attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 7 is the public commentary. This is a time where if you are here in the audience, if there's something that you would like to speak about, it can be on the agenda tonight, or it may be something that's not on the agenda. And then just so you know, as the chairperson of this board, I always allow public commentary on each individual item if anyone has something to say. So, yes, sir.
I've talked here before, but my name is David Cooley at 206 Georgia Avenue. My family's been here since early 1900s. I've just got some comments about some concerns I'm hearing from a lot of residents. The number one is it seems that we're spending a lot of money in Lynn Haven right now, a lot more than we have available. Again, that's an overall comment I'm hearing from a lot of people. Secondly, it seems that we're giving way too much control to our city managers, and that's not any reflection on Mr. White, but that's been going on for a long time. It just seems like, because John Lynch really, I think, carried it to the extreme with some things, but that's neither here nor there. I just think we need to look at the control that our city manager has and just make sure it's not exceeded or anything. I'm not saying he's done anything wrong, but just to make sure. Second thing, I think we're not getting enough competitive bids on projects that we're doing. Even on smaller jobs, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but it just seems like we're getting out a lot of contracts without competitive bids, and that's including engineering services. Another concern I have is I've got a lot of friends in the city workers, and they're really complaining right now about the new uniform. I understand that there's been a new contract for uniforms for $70,000, even though we have an outstanding contract with another company for uniforms. I don't know if y'all could check into that or not, but it seems like we've got an outstanding contract and now we've got a new one for $70,000. But the city workers, everybody I've talked to, absolutely hate that new uniform. It's probably great for winter, but in the summertime, if you don't mind, talk to some of the city workers and see what they have to say, but I think they'll say the same thing. They're way too hot for summertime. Maybe in wintertime, but that's about all I had. So,
okay,
some
I appreciate your comments. I would respond, and then if anyone else on the board would like to as well, I would just respond that most of the comments that you made were sort of in generalities. And so if you would pick specific, when you say spending too much money, maybe pick specific items that you're thinking about. How many workers complained? Was it 4 or 5, or was it 20 or 30? Those, if you can speak more and maybe make an appointment with city manager. But the final comment I guess I would make is that Lynn Haven has, in our charter, we have a city manager form of government. The only other city in Bay County that has, as far as I know, I think I'm correct on this, a strong mayor government where the mayor is pretty much the head of the city is Springfield. And I know right after becoming mayor, looking at that concept, most of the counties and municipalities in the state of Florida embrace the city manager form of government with the mayor as the head of the government only in times of emergency. So it is important, I think, that the city manager and the commission have a good working relationship, especially the mayor and the city manager, and it certainly makes a difference when they do. But your comments were certainly heard by me. If you'd like to come in sometime and discuss them, individually and with detail, I would certainly love to listen. Okay, appreciate that. Anyone else on the board want to respond, city manager?
I'd like
sure.
to
Go ahead.
add to that. You mentioned the uniform $70,000 versus $90,000. I will say I cannot remember exactly the amount. It sounded like it's around $70,000, but the difference is the city owns those uniforms. The $90-something thousand we was paying each year was just to rent them. So we hope to cut our costs these uniforms will last quite a while, so I'm hoping to cut a lot of costs each and every year, just replacing those that get tore and those that get stained.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir. Anybody else on the board want to respond to that? Or?
Sure, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Mayor. City manager and I have actually talked about that. I have talked to quite a few of them, and I would concur. But city manager and I have talked about it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I believe, Mr. Walker, you had a comment?
Good evening. Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I have to take a little liberty here. I was given this package by a gentleman who is sick and could not present it.
Okay.
He gave me the instructions, so I'm going to use part of my 3 minutes and do exactly what he would say as a citizen of this town.
Okay.
He requested me to give this to you,
Okay.
each one a copy. And what it is there's a rundown of bills and everything over, I think it's a 4-year period for the city attorney.
Okay. Okay, if you're giving it to each commission member, and then maybe wait till you get back to the podium, because so everybody can hear what you have to say, okay? Okay. Thank you.
Comment that he made and said to you, it's an awful lot of money to be paid. This is not in disrespect to Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson is the representative of the city attorney. The city attorney is a company downtown, okay? I just want that clear. And his statement was, just take a look at this. It's a lot of money, okay?
Thank you.
Now the rest of my 131.
You may have your own 3 minutes since you spoke for someone else.
My learned friend there brought up a very good point.
Okay.
If you look at the budget, you will see that the money in there is for a yearly charge for uniforms. I, too, am getting comments from the workers. I usually go out and, seeing that I'm working on a building, they come to me and they say things, too. As I understand it, the company that we have the contract with is out of New York. These uniforms would be good for New York weather. It would not be good for 110-degree weather in Florida. I know because it's very hot out there. And I can understand what they're saying. I'm surprised that the employees do not bring this directly to their managers to be brought directly to the city manager. I'm surprised at that. But I also know why, and I won't reiterate that. I just want to substantiate what that learned gentleman brought about the uniforms. I'm receiving the same comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have something you'd like to speak on this evening? Topic. Yes, sir.
Would now be an appropriate time, or should
You can do it now, or you can wait until we get to the item, whichever you prefer. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bullock. I'm the proud principal of Mosley High School. And before I kind of go into talking about the homecoming, I want to thank each and every one of you for the beautification that you've made over the past few years of Lynn Haven. And as lifelong residents, it's been pleasing to see that. So thank each and every single one of you. Also want to thank Ms. Gaynor for contacting me last week in regards to the possible change of moving the homecoming parade from Highway 77 to possibly Florida Avenue. And as the email that you received earlier, it has been tradition. The parade has been going down Highway 77 for many, many years. And Mosley High School is your community high school. The city of Lynn Haven, Mosley High School has had a great partnership for 40 plus years, and we want to continue that. The concern moving from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road would possibly bring up safety concerns for all our spectators and families that are out there. And in all honesty, what we're asking is for a 30-minute parade. We're asking for 5 blocks is what we're asking for. I don't think that's too much to ask for as your community high school. And it's not just Mosley. It's all of your elementary schools. It's those students. It's those parents that participate. It's all of your middle schools, the band that participates, the families that are out there watching. Again, it's not just Mosley. It is Lynn Haven. And I know this was not your intention to have the conversation about it, but as the principal, how it feels to me, to our students, to our community, the thought of moving it from 77, taking away that tradition, moving it to Florida Avenue, it made us feel that we're not that important. So I just wanted to thank you for allowing us to come here to this evening to share that information with you. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Bullock, if I could respond, and then if anybody else on the board would like to, of course they will. Just from the discussion we had at the last board meeting, I had the feeling from all of the commissioners and from the people in the audience at that time that the feeling of not having it on Highway 77 is definitely not from this board. I think what is trying to be communicated is that Florida Department of Transportation now has control of that road. It is a state road. And we've already been given some warning, not really, I wouldn't want to use the warning, but we've been given some possible future recommendations that we might not want to plan on it for parades because there may come a time when they deny these applications. So while we haven't yet gotten to the item, we haven't just, we're not bringing it to a vote or anything even close to that. I just want you to know, I think that everyone on this commission, I think I can speak for all of us, that we support Mosley High School and we support your ability to have the parade where you always have, but it may be out of our control at some point, and I think that's what the commission wants you to understand. And even our Christmas parade, when we first started it just 2 years ago, we went ahead and started the tradition of the Christmas parade on Florida Avenue, which is just as long as 77, but it is not 77, and I certainly recognize that. But we started our Christmas parade on that street because we knew there would come a time when they'll tell us no, and maybe possibly even our 4th of July parade. So those are just my comments, but I don't think you're going to meet with a great deal of resistance from the commission. I think it's going to be the ultimate decider, the Florida Department of Transportation. So anybody else want to address that from the commission? Okay. Okay, cool. All right. All right, moving on then. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? And certainly, students, you're certainly welcome to participate tonight. We're glad to have you here. Okay. All right, go ahead.
My name is Jacob Pickle, and I'm the junior class president at Mosley High School, and I'm just here to represent the student voice and once again reiterate what Mr. Bullock said. And I know what you just said, I understand the Florida Department of Transportation and all that going down. But yes, just want to reiterate that that has been the tradition. That's been the looking forward to your senior year homecoming float, riding down 77, City Hall in the background. That's what we've grown up looking at with our older siblings going there. And that's just the tradition, and that we really enjoy that. So it may not be under your control eventually, but at least for the foreseeable future where it is, we really enjoy having it on Highway 77 as it is tradition. It's just something we look forward to as the Mosley student body. So thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Caroline Noble. I was the SGA president last year, and like Mr. Bullock and Jacob Pickle both said, it is tradition, but also I know last year we almost had to move it because of construction and just how stressful that was on me and Ms. Tidwell and Mr. Bullock just trying to figure it out. And I know it'd be stressful trying to move it from a 4-lane to a 2-lane and safety, and it does fall back on the students. Because as a president, I know my sister's also the sophomore class president this year, and Pickle and Taylor this year. It falls back on them. And I know it's a safety concern, but they are also part of it, and they have to help find people and they are also going to have to explain why it's not tradition. And as an older sibling, I've always, my sister and I've been in this parade since we were 4 and 6 years old, riding on floats, riding with Mr. Husfeld when he was principal all the way up till now. So I just know it's tradition, but also it's kind of hard to sit and explain to a student who thinks, well, it is in your control, when they don't understand it's not in your control. And I know how hard it is. I know how hard it would be for Mr. Bullock and all the students who it is tradition looking up. So I just know it's not in your control. It's in the transportation control, but while it's still in your control, I think it should stay on 77. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then at this time I would conclude item number 7, our public commentary, and move on to the consent agenda. Item number 8, the minutes of the July 10th regular meeting, and then item number 9, approval of the actuarial services agreement for the City of Lynn Haven's other post-employment benefits plan, the OPED, for the 2018-2019 fiscal year with Foster and Foster. A motion needed to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any question or discussion on either items 8 or 9 from the board? Any questions or discussion from the public on items 8 or 9? There appears to be none. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so the consent agenda is approved. We move to old business. Item number 10, this is the discussion regarding the Mosley Parade Route. And if you have your agenda, we did have a typo there. We do know we spelled M-O-S-L-E-Y. Sorry about that. Regarding the Mosley Parade Route running north on Highway 77, beginning at the Lynn Haven Baptist Church to 5th Street, and possibly moving the parade to an alternate route or Florida Avenue. City Manager, you had a report on this.
Yes, ma'am. Y'all asked us to get with the school, which I asked Vicki to get with Brian and hear their thoughts and concerns as it relates to that. And I heard the children. I appreciate all your comments. To bring you back to where we got with this issue was something that brought to me by our chief of police. It's a safety issue. One thing I totally understand going down a 4-lane highway, but the safety issue as far as trying to control Highway 77 and all the other routes, like the intersection of 9th and Illinois, the buildup of traffic. We only have X number of people as far as police department try to handle these things, and the detour route, it also encompasses we have to stop traffic. The way I understand, I haven't watched it. My daughter will be going to Mosley this year. So she will be in the MAPS program, and I'm on your side. The biggest issue is a safety issue. And even if y'all do, say, leave it on Highway 77, we do have to fill out the paperwork, so it is not a guarantee that it will be on 77 this year. DOT is the one who is driving force behind that. They may reject it and say, we're done. They may tell you do kind of like Bozeman or like Bay uses Harrison, that's one of their streets just like Florida or Pennsylvania. So that's the reason it was brought to the commission. It wasn't nothing to take away from tradition or any of that. It was safety reasons.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board regarding item number 10?
Mayor, I'd just like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the route on 77 for the Mosley Parade.
Second.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second to approve the traditional route on Highway 77. Any questions or discussion from the board?
I would just like to add that we recognize it's tradition. I also talk to the chief a little bit more. We recognize the safety concerns, and I know we've talked about volunteers and stuff like that may or may not work out, but I just hope that it will continue on there, and we do recognize the chief, and we really appreciate you looking out for the safety of the residents and all involved, but I just feel it's very necessary that we go ahead and keep the tradition on 77 if we can. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else from the board?
Mayor, I agree with what he says. I do want to add one caveat that any direction of traffic be done by sworn law enforcement officers. If we can add that to the motion.
I would add that to my motion, yes.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
I believe you'd have to withdraw the first one or add to it, or?
I can.
Okay.
I withdraw the first motion, make the motion that we continue to have the Mosley Parade on Highway 77 with the caveat that anyone directing traffic has to be a law enforcement officer.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on the added motion, the added amendment to the motion? Okay. Are there any questions or discussion from the public? Would you like to approach the podium, sir?
Walt Kelly, 333 Moore Drive. Keep the route like it's been for the last 22 years I know of. We always got notified it's possible that they might want you to change it, but it's never happened. And they need, the van needs a room, the fire trucks needs a room to go up and down 77, and let's support these kids.
Appreciate your comment. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. I think you're all set, Mosley. It's approved. Okay.
Thanks for
So
coming.
We'll send up some prayers for FDOT as well, okay? Okay, moving on to new, you're
And-
welcome to leave.
and just-
Yes, go ahead.
We will take the paperwork, make sure it gets out tomorrow. Would that be? Tomorrow, so we should know an answer pretty soon. All right, thank y'all.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of our exciting meeting, or you may leave. Bye-bye.
And Mayor, I'd just like to remind the chief that my car is yellow. Just saying.
Moving on to, thank you. Moving on to new business. Item number 11 is the presentation of the city's stormwater map on the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES webpage, and we have a presentation from our Lynn Haven scientist and friend, Mr. Phil Mount.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson. Commissioners and esteemed staff, thank you for what you guys do for our community. My name is Phil Mount. I am PM Stormwater LLC, currently under contract with the City of Lynn Haven to manage the city's stormwater permit. We negotiated with the state last year, this past winter, for our new permit, and one of the items that we'd agreed upon was the presentation of the city stormwater map twice a year to the commission and the public. So if there were any questions or could be stated. The web link is on the Public Works Department webpage, and it's under NPDES. And if you read down here and you go there, you'll see what NPDES, the acronym, means. Obviously a federal program with that acronym. It's a result of the 1972 Clean Water Act enacted by our federal government. Just click on this. Mr. Hill has armed me with a mouse here, and I'm having difficulty moving uphill. There we go. I got it. I'm in control. When you first get here, you'll see that the boundary of the city is outlined, and that's about it, because at this resolution, that's all you get. So you have to zoom in, and you have to zoom in, and then when you get to the properties, and then one more, here we go, you can go to this layer button, and then over here, stormwater. And let's get rid of the addresses to make it to keep it uncluttered. And hence you have the stormwater web link that is public. It's a joint product of the City of Lynn Haven and Bay County. And on there, if you want to click retention ponds, up they come in light blue. Let me drag us down a little bit here. Look at that. I mean, I'm empowered. The light blue, these are the stormwater basins that the city has taken the responsibility of maintenance and ownership and maintenance of. There are some 30-some basins that the city's responsible for. And if you click this guy, it shows you all the easements that the city is responsible for, which in some cases it includes where the basins are. In other cases, the hard to get to drainage easements behind properties. So if you ever had the need to respond to one of your citizens, you could go and do a little work yourself. The one that's really important is the outfalls, and that shows in the pretty blue flower. There are some 88 outfalls from the city limits that go into state waters. And hence, this is why the city has a permit to discharge stormwater from city limits. And you just scroll around, you see where they are. I know this one right here, we just apparently just inherited it. I know that's DOT's, but the rest are ours. It's a self thing all the way to ditches, to all the piping. Watch this. It's something you can do when you know, and the arrows show the flow. The entire city was surveyed, and you can determine anything you need. The real reason we have it is so that when the engineers are doing their thing with respect to floodplain studies, all the groundwork has already been done. We will update this monthly, basically, and I'll be back in January and report again. Can I entertain any questions?
Does anyone have a question for Mr. Mount?
I don't have a question, but I certainly have a statement. I met Mr. Mount probably 10 years ago or something, and he showed up in my backyard because I was wanting to fill in a ditch that had water in it. And he came out, and after about 10 minutes, he goes, "No, this won't happen. You have fish in here." So I think you do a great job, and this is great. I had no idea that we had a map like this that, you know, shows flow and everything. It's wonderful.
It is.
Thank you.
It was a good product of the city and the county.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for coming and taking your time to
Thanks for
share
your
with all of
attention.
us. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 12. This is concerning approval to enter into an agreement with Odyssey Manufacturing Company for a chlorine refill station for sodium hypochlorite supply and site lease agreement. And this is action will be required on this item, and the city manager does have some information for you.
Yes, to let you know, this agreement, lease agreement between us and Odyssey Manufacturing Company has been looked at by legal. To give it the short version of what this agreement does, it allows us to have a refill station for pool bleach on site. The company handles everything. It saves us delivery of bleach. Our cost right now is around 90 cents a gallon. This allows us to get bleach for 75 cents a gallon. And we use about 3,000 gallons a month. Plus, the bleach will be a lot fresher. It's not sitting in a truck for a few days, losing some of its chemical powers. And lastly, we will have some very good bleach, chlorine residual for the splash pads. So our staff recommends that you pass this agreement.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
Mayor, can I ask a
Yes,
question real quick?
absolutely.
I assume there's equipment, like you said. The savings sounds wonderful. What is the equipment costing us as far as the lease per year?
Nothing. They will install everything, and they will also fill up at this station as well.
So there's no cost to us at all?
No cost to us. No, ma'am.
Can't beat free.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any questions or discussion from the public? There appears to be none. Mr. White?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the item stands approved. Item 13 is the approval of the city's health and dental insurance plan for the 2018-2019 year with action required. The city manager has a little information, I believe, for us on this as well.
Yes, ma'am. As far as our telemedicine, dental, base life, long-term disability, vision, supplemental life, critical illness, and accident protection, all those will be at a 0% increase, 0% decrease. So they are status quo. The only one we've looked at is medical, and I've done some finagling with our insurance carriers, Abentross, and working with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we come up with a program that they have. If we are willing to transfer our dental from MetLife, which I mentioned it'd be a 0 increase, but saying we switch it from there to the Florida, back to the Florida Blue, same coverage, they will assume what MetLife was charging us. So it'd be a 0 cost. And then another option is Blue Cross Blue Shield account and retention agreement. What happens if we sign this agreement, we get more detailed claims experience, so we know what is costing the city on claims, which claims are costing us the most, where we can detail a plan tailored to the city and its employees for the future. Also, if we have one bad claim, you know, usually you hear from a lot of people, insurance companies, you have that one bad claim and you pay for it for several years out. If we enroll in this program with them, this retention agreement, that one claim gets thrown out so it doesn't hurt future costs of insurance. And lastly, if we enroll in this, for any savings, depending on how much our claims experience was, how much they actually had to pay out, if they made money on the city of Lynn Haven, we get to share in the revenues, meaning if the first year would be at 25% of what they saved. If we done it the second year, it'd be 35%, and if we did it third year on up, it'd be 50%. What you're trying to do with this plan is hedge your risk in the future, hoping that you will get a refund check at the end of the year that your employees are healthy. What this will cost us is 2%. What that means to the employee, the employee would see about a 30 cents a month increase in their cost of insurance, and that's using the primary one we have more than 80 people on. So it'd be very small, but I think the rewards will allow us to see what we actually is costing us, and we can design plans in the future. We can use some of this money. My intention is to use some of this money to offset employee and city costs in the future, in case we do have an increase.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a motion?
So when you get the information from claims, are you getting a detailed?
Not now.
And why not?
Because they will not release that information. They don't have to.
Okay. So the dental with MetLife versus Florida combined. So why did they want Florida combined?
Because MetLife was wanting almost a 4% increase in cost for the same plan.
For the exact same plan?
It's the exact same plan, yes, sir.
Okay.
They said if we brought the dental back, that they would leave it at what we paid last year.
Okay.
Does anyone else on the commission have a question for the city manager?
I do.
Okay.
So they said they would leave it the same as last year. That doesn't guarantee us that they won't increase it next year, right?
No, ma'am. No rates are ever guaranteed.
But they can never guarantee.
Okay, please ask to be recognized. Thank you.
Yeah.
So.
Do we have any idea? What kind of claims we paid out this year, or what it has cost the city with this new company?
As far as claims itself, we're still in the turn. I do not have that number with me, so we're about from our year will give up in October, so I don't know that number yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this plan.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion for approval and a second. Any further discussion or questions from the board?
The only thing I'd add, Mayor, is this has been a home run for the employees. Mr. White did a good job putting this together, and so I certainly support him taking the lead and suggesting this a little bit of a different direction to go. But this has been an outstanding benefit for the employees of Lynn Haven.
And I agree with that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Walker?
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Just a little question, and maybe correct something in my mind. When we first started on this medical program, I understood, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the city pays 95% of the premiums for all employees.
That's correct.
That's number one. We pay 95% of the premiums for all employees. And there, on that policy is also a $5,000 deductible?
Correct.
Boy, I'd like to work for you guys to pay my medical. That is a nice package. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Does anyone else have a comment or question? Okay, there's been a motion and a second for approval of the city's health and dental insurance plan for the 2018-2019 year. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so that will stand approved. Moving to item number 14, this is discussion and approval of the city manager's yearly evaluation in accordance with section number 6 of the city manager's employment agreement. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion for approval? Gentlemen, just let me know what you'd like to, where you'd like to go with this.
Yeah.
And
Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we allow the mayor to enter into negotiations with the city manager on compensation going forward or a potential increase.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
I'll second for discussion purposes. What kind of?
Okay, I don't think that was the motion. I think he said that he would make a motion for the mayor to enter into a discussion for possible changes, or maybe to stay the same, of compensation, and then I'm assuming to bring back to
Yes,
the board
ma'am.
for, yes.
Of course.
So nothing
yeah.
there except just giving the mayor the ability to negotiate and to discuss on behalf of the board, as I did when Mr. White was hired.
Right.
Okay, so I still second the motion.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I still have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
There's been a motion and a second, and now there's a question.
So what, do you have any
Yeah. Absolutely.
details?
Yeah. Well, I just
Okay, wait, I didn't hear Mr. Barnes's question.
Oh, I'm
He
sorry.
said he had a question.
I need details of what he is proposing.
Okay,
That's all.
Okay, Commissioner Friend, then if you want to come forward with details
Yeah.
and answer Mr. Barnes's question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, basically, when we hired Mr. White, and I think we did the same when we hired Mr. Schubert, I think it's I'll just say, and then I'll make a statement, I guess. I think the mayor could take the lead and go in, sit down with some direction, which we could give now during discussion of the motion, and sit down and negotiate with the city manager. I know I've personally talked with him about not only his review, but a potential increase. But I just, so basically I would like for the mayor to be appointed to go sit down, discuss any kind of, raise or things like that, and then come back and present that to the commission, as opposed to us, just hashing it out between all five of us or four of us tonight to try to come to a conclusion. I don't mind if I can elaborate. I don't mind saying that what I would like for the mayor to entertain when she's sitting down to negotiate is, I think Mr. White's done an outstanding job. I think we're lucky to have him. I think that as Lynn Haven continues to grow, and if we continue to go in the direction that we're going, as much as I would like to take credit for all of that, the city manager has a great deal to do with the success of the city with our particular city government. So I'd like to take that into consideration, because I think what's going to happen is, I think as we continue to do well, I think he's gonna become more valuable to another city, because we start shining more and more. People start looking at Lynn Haven, and they may want to steal him away. So I think we need to take that into consideration. I think so. If we look at possibly giving him an increase to his salary, you've got that avenue to take. I know that we give him, I think it's like $750 or whatever the exact number is for his car.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so I think we could consider that when we're negotiating. And also, I'd like to consider, I think we're doing a phone. I think that's something we can consider. I don't know if other cities do it, but I know for other companies that they would pay a president or CEO for their gas. So that's another way that we might can compensate. So those are the things that I would like for the mayor to just go in and sit down and negotiate on our behalf, and then come back and present that to us, and then we could vote on that particular package, if you will.
I appreciate that direction, because we obviously can't talk at any other time. So anything that anybody wants to say or questions you'd like to ask, this is the time to do it. Even though it is in a public forum, and probably no other employee in the world has their evaluation in front of the public. It's a very private thing, but it's also a very public thing. So Commissioner Tender or Commissioner Barnes, if you have added direction you would like to add, I'll certainly entertain that.
Well, I'd just say that I have complete confidence in your abilities to negotiate. So I'd just like to wait and see what you come back with.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Commissioner Barnes, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, we'll just take it as it comes.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I could just, sorry,
Yes,
one
no,
more thing.
please go ahead.
I just wanted to also, because city manager and I went over this, but because it is public record when do an evaluation, I'd like the opportunity to just say that I may do evaluations a little different than other folks. So if you see M's, that means he meets expectations. If you see an O, that's above and beyond. When I get an evaluation, when we interviewed Mr. White, I had an expectation of how he would carry out his duties. So when I put a meet expectations, that's not a negative thing. And that's just the way I do evaluations. You'll see these evaluations, and I think it's great. We have 5 of us, and we all evaluated separately and differently in some cases. But just wanted to point that out, that Mr. White completely understands where I'm coming from, but I just wanted to point that out if you're reviewing this. It doesn't mean it's a negative. If I see meet expectations, that's just because that's what I expected. Thank you, Mayor.
You're very welcome. So there's been a motion and a second. The motion basically for me to take these ideas and to set a time to meet with Mr. White and enter into a negotiation for the contract for the coming year. Is there any comment or questions from the public before we take a vote on the motion? There appears to be none. Mr. White, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so that motion stands approved. And I would just like to add and say publicly, Mr. White, that since you have been the city manager, I feel that there is a team spirit with our employees. I certainly feel that you have embraced the vision that people told me they wanted for Lynn Haven 3.5 years ago when I became mayor. And I want you to know publicly how much I appreciate you. And I think that the city appreciates you from the number of phone calls, emails. Everywhere I go, people tell me how beautiful Lynn Haven looks, how excited they are about the direction we're going. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. Moving on to number 15. That is to set the proposed millage rate and budget hearing dates for purposes of submission of the certificate of taxable value to the property appraiser's office pursuant to the TRIM Act. And there is action required on this item. However, keeping in mind that the action taken tonight is not a final action, it's just setting the highest rate that we can achieve as far as moving up or down with the TRIM. We can go lower, but we cannot go higher than what we set tonight during the course of the public hearings. Okay. So is there a motion of any type, or do we just want to hear from the city manager first? Would you like to kind of make a little report, and then we'll move from there? Okay.
One of the things I mentioned earlier, we're having our visioning session on July 31st, and I wish we kind of already had it before this, but you will be seeing that day a lot of costs associated with the city as we try to bring things up to standards and also replace a lot of equipment, add people with the city growing. So there's a lot that goes into this. My view is this year, my recommendation to y'all would be not roll it back, but leave it as is to go with the flow of the economy, because the economy is strong right now. I can foresee possibly next year that y'all would have to raise it somewhat to accommodate a lot of the needs that the different departments have with the ability to serve the citizens. So the proposed rate of 3.9 would be what I recommend, leaving it as is, let it go forward.
Okay. Is there a motion, or is there some discussion before the motion? Let me know your pleasure.
I'd rather make the motion first, but
okay.
If you don't mind, move approval.
Okay, you move approval of leaving the proposed rate at 3.9
as presented. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for the proposed rate of 3.9. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mayor, if I may. City manager and I discussed this in great length. I'm very excited that we're able to maybe hold the millage at 3.9, but cautious. And he and I talked about next year may have to be the year. I mean, I know the home values are going up, economy strong, but I'm very impressed that, and I know that he worked really hard on this, that we're able to keep the millage at the same for this year. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any other discussion? Commissioner Tender, you want to weigh in, or you're good? Okay. At this point, there's been a motion and a second to retain the proposed rate at 3.9. Is there any discussion from the public or questions from the public? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Again, Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I seem to have missed something. I'm sorry. I'm not dealing with the subject right now, but
I'm sorry, you didn't hear what I said.
I think I missed something on the number 14 item. Your motion and what you agreed on was separate from the approval and of the city manager's yearly evaluation. Is that, am I right?
Okay, we've sort of moved back to item number 14. We're on item 15 now, but I will take your.
I know that, but
I will take your question.
I won't have a chance.
Okay, it's no problem. No problem.
But am I
I would say to you that by Commissioner Friend making the motion for me to enter into negotiation for a possible salary increase, and I think that he implied that we have approved. I don't know that he used the word approved, but I believe he implied. I would ask the attorney, if you feel that we need to go back and use the word approval in the motion, we can revisit that item and do it to make sure that it's completely correct. But I caught it as an implied motion when he said what he did.
Okay. Thank you.
No, ma'am. I don't think that's necessary.
Okay. Okay. The attorney says he does not think it's necessary, that the fact that Commissioner Friend asked that we enter into negotiations to possibly add benefits or salary, that was the approval of his evaluation.
Okay, because I was waiting for comments from the audience on that subject, and I didn't get a chance to stand up.
Okay, well, I did offer a time for audience comment,
Yeah,
but if you have
the motion.
Okay, if you'll allow me, if you had a comment that you wanted to make after we finish with item 15, I'll be happy to revisit and allow you to make that comment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Okay, back to item 15. We've had a motion on the floor from Commissioner Friend where he has made the motion that we keep the proposed rate at 3.9, and then that was seconded by Commissioner Barnes. There was no further discussion by the board or questions. Are there questions or discussion from the audience on that item? There appears to be none. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so we will retain our proposed rate at 3.9, Mr. White. Okay, I will revisit item number 14 for the purpose we've moved on from it, but I will revisit it if anyone from the audience has a comment on item number 14 concerning the approval of the city manager's evaluation. I'll take that now. Mr. Walker. And I do apologize for any confusion about that.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Thank you for that.
Of course.
If you take a look at the evaluations, 3 of the 5 evaluations are not critical, but they explain something about what the city's problem is. This city cannot get along without bonds, bonuses, gratuities, accepting things from the state, et cetera, et cetera. We have to be living with above. We don't get along with our tax base. We don't use that. If you take a look at the city manager's evaluation, 3 of the 5 commissioners questioned in writing the reason and why we're spending so much money. That was brought up by a fellow individual just about an hour ago. And the city is spending a lot of money, and they're wondering, one commissioner said, it seems that we're going back into debt back in the days previous. If you take a look at the audit shows one thing. It says your debt service. The people of this town believe the debt service is what we have in bonds. That is not true. The debt service is the interest we pay. I do not find anywhere in the budgets, anywhere in the audit, a total picture of exactly what we owe. It's hidden here, it's hidden here, it's hidden there. the city manager's evaluation and your question to his evaluation deal with that. I would strongly take a look at our debt and how much we're spending. And what the citizens are worried about is where is the money coming from? Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to invite, speaking about that, I would like to invite all of you to please come, if you can, to the 8 to 12 workshop. But in defense of that, I would like to say that the $10 million that was borrowed against the half-cent surtax, that money is coming in from the state every month. And you said 3 of the 5, but if you looked at the mayor's evaluation, there's a quite detailed paragraph about that amount of money. And I'm the one in December of 2016 who brought before the commission, 2 of which are on this board now and 2 which were on it then, and said, let's borrow up to the minimum amount that we're going to get on this half-cent sales tax that we may never, ever get again, the minimum being $15 to $17 million. This is money that we will never have the opportunity to get again. My disagreement, if you noticed it in my evaluation, was that the city, the way we have written it up, and with this commission's approval, the city has written this up so that we're making a payment every 6 months of about $250,000, when I believe that every month that passes, when the money comes in from the state, it should immediately go on the debt. We have $2 million, approximately 2.2 right now, that we've received from the state that we need to just go ahead and push into that debt, and now instead of owing 10, we'd owe 8. We also need to continue to borrow right now while the rates are at 2.4, 3.5, and now they're almost to 4. If we don't do it now, next year it'll be 8%. I predict that based on everything I'm reading. Lynn Haven may never have this opportunity again. We are ahead of every city in this county right now. We've paved almost 1/5, 20% of our roads. We're replacing all of that old infrastructure that hasn't been touched in 70 years, clay pipes. Our water treatment plant is already right now increasing capacity by almost 500,000 gallons a day, and that's going to save us a ton of money in the future. So when you talk about debt, there are bonds from years ago and there's debt from years ago, but the $10 million, I gladly take responsibility for that, because that money is coming in every single month and we should be sweeping it back to the state every single month, reducing that debt and continuing to pave roads until we pay it off. And then probably by the last 5 years, last 3 years of this 10-year surtax period, we're probably going to get a lot more money in, because we're going to get so much money from this as the economy continues to improve. And I think that Lynn Haven will even be further ahead of the game. So I do take full responsibility for that, but I do hope that we can look at, instead of paying interest to the bank and putting $38,000 a month as it comes in into a sinking fund, that we sweep account and we pay this off every month. And we'll be talking more about that at that budget meeting, and I hope you'll come and listen, because it'll be very, very intuitive. Discussion? Yes. Now we're still on item number 14 about the city manager's approval. I was giving some opportunity for people. Since I said it, I will entertain your response. I will. I said it, I sort of soapboxed there, so I will give you that opportunity to respond.
Brad Yunt, 210 Lakeview Terrace. And as I understand it, these are bonds?
This is a bank loan that we made.
Not a bond?
No. Okay. Yes. We have 2 separate loans, one for 4 and one for 6, a total of $10 million.
And
go ahead, attorney.
Just for clarification, there is actually one bond that's issued. It's with a bank, though. The bank holds the bond itself. It's not sold. It's not like the buy and sell bonds. Sold on the public markets. No.
Thank you very much. Okay, does that clarify? And we will talk more about that at the workshop, and if you can be there, I would love for you to be there. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else that we needed to say about the city manager's evaluation? But I just wanted to clarify that I did make some comments about finance when, on mine. Okay. Okay, moving on then to item 16. That is the approval of the Kinsall Park Splash Pad Pavilion rental fees, rules and regulations, and agreement with action required. And I believe city manager might want to clarify some of that or discuss it.
Just a couple of things. Some of these regulations may change. We're still working on the number of people, capacity of the that can be on the splash pad at once. Some of the things about the time frame as far as March, September. Sometimes we have hot weather in October. It's going to depend a little bit on here or there. But as far as rental and things of that nature, as the time frames, that's probably where we're going to shoot for, some early times and late times. The biggest thing is try to rent this for parties, but also it's free to the public. So with that, as far as renting, we tried to figure out what would be the most economical amount that we could charge, because we don't want it rented all the time, because if you rent it all the time, the other kids won't get to play. And then if you rent it, don't rent it for parties, somebody may get mad on that. So just thinking about 20 kids at a party, at $200, $10 a head, what they, for that. So that's where that number kind of came from. We started with 150, but the cleaning and all, sending employees back over to clean up to make sure it's ready to go for the public. There's a cost associated with that.
Is that all you had? Okay, Commissioner Tender, do you have a question? Go ahead.
I have a comment about that. Excuse me. I wasn't aware that we were going to rent the splash pad at all, but if we're going to rent the splash pad, I think there has to be a time element, because right now, Mom's going to pick up at 10 in the morning, pack up her kids to go, and get there and find out she can't even go. So I think that's going to be, it's going to turn out to be a negative. But if we're going to if we want to rent it, if that turns out the decision, I think it should be a time element. If somebody wants to rent it for $200, give it to them for 1 hour.
Yes, ma'am.
Or something. You can't rent it to them half the day.
No, ma'am. 2 hours is going to be the max. That's what we're recommending. That way they cut cake, play, and go back. But we did talk about that. Unfortunately, some people, mom, dad can't get off early in the morning for a kid's birthday party. So we thought about all different times, but we will have signage up there and letting everybody know what days it is rented, when it's rented. Each day that thing will be changing. Plus, we'll be adding this to our website like we do all the other rentals. We rent all the pavilions. We rent baseball fields. All that stuff's put on there. So everything's for rent if somebody wants.
Is this just at Kane Griffin, or is it going to be at Kane Griffin? That's my question.
This will be at both splash pads.
And are we going to charge the same amount at both?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, Mr. White, the way it's written on the agenda, it's approval of the Kensaw Park splash pad, so it doesn't.
I'm sorry.
So we might have to come back and revisit, or either we need to restate.
As far as staff's intent is for both splash pads.
I could entertain a motion that we change the wording in the agenda if you would like that.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion that we change item 16 to read approval of the Kensaw Park and the Kane Griffin Park, adding it to this? In other words, that the party time, whatever we approve, it would apply to both splash pads. Is there a motion that we could change that item?
So move.
Okay, there's a motion that we would add the word Kane Griffin Park splash pad.
Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion? Any problem from the public with that? Okay, Mr. White, please call the roll.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so this will, whatever we decide concerning the rental fees, rules, and regulations tonight would apply to both splash pads then.
And one thing that I did not add on here, like I said, some of these regulations need to be tweaked this is new for us as far as staff, like holidays. Holidays, we see the thing not be rented out at all to anybody. It's open to the public. That way, one family doesn't have an advantage over another.
I would like to say, Mr. White, that I think it's a good idea to start out. I think most of the ideas that you have there are quite reasonable, and I think splash parks are a new territory for Lynn Haven, and we have to start out with some rules and regulations. I think the ones that you've outlined that the staff has come up with are reasonable ones, and if we see that something's not working out, we can come back and revisit it as we go. Those are my thoughts. So are there any other comments or questions, or would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
What are the regulations? I've not seen them.
He's got it in the packet there.
Right here on the first part of the packet.
All right.
You have the page number there.
Yes, it's first.
Can I just look at yours?
Yeah,
real
you
quick?
can have it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from Commissioner Friend or Commissioner Barn regarding this?
Mayor, I'm just ready to make a motion if you're ready to entertain.
I'll give Commissioner Tender just another moment to look at
Sure.
the rules and regulations.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do have a question. Let's say somebody pays $200 to rent it and it's raining. Do they get a refund or do they have to reschedule?
Yes, ma'am.
They get a refund?
Yes, ma'am. We refund quite regular on certain events.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Tender?
No, I guess.
Okay. Is there
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are we going to have somebody there to make these or to uphold these regulations and whatnot?
Yes, ma'am. That's part of my presentation on the 31st.
Okay.
I got a new vision idea for the city as it relates to a lot of our stuff in the parks.
Okay.
But this particular item is just concerning the rental fees, the rules and regulations, but there will be some more information coming about concessions and personnel and all that. Okay, is there a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion that we approve as presented, but adding that the splash pad will not be available for the holidays.
Okay.
Second.
So there has been a motion that we approve as presented with the addition that the splash pads would not be available for rental on holidays because obviously those are the days when the children are out of school. And there's been a second. Any questions or discussion?
Just one quick thing.
Sure.
Speaking of regulations, are we gonna put like normal rules?
We have all that ready to go on the fence.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Yes.
Brad Yunt, 210 Lakeview Terrace. It seems to me that you're talking about exclusive access to the splash pad.
Yes, sir.
How about non-exclusive access? Is that compatible with a party of 20 kids? That should be a lot more reasonable in cost because it wouldn't inconvenience the other children.
I think that's a viable suggestion.
And that would be something
that
that'd be a lot more economical, I think, for families.
Okay, I think that's a viable suggestion, and as you know, we've had the motion on the floor already, but I think that it's something that we could look at, like we said, as we move along, what's working and what's not. Very good suggestion.
May I say one more thing?
Sure.
I feel really strongly about this, as strongly as I felt that we should have a park at King Griffin. To rent the park for an hour or 2 hours for $200, what I'm envisioning is going to happen, and please correct me if you disagree, the wealthy are going to be using the splash pad, and the kids that could ride their bikes, the kids that we created the parks for, are going to be going down there, the 12-year-olds and whatnot, to find out they can't go in. And so what I see happening is the wealthy are going to use a splash pad, and the kids that I thought kind of created it for are going to be turned away. And I really think we need to revisit this if that's how it turns out, that it's always rented and the kids that we built it for are not going to be able to use it.
I completely agree with you, and the splash pad, that particular one especially, as I feel like it's just kind of like my child that I've watched over, and I'm going to be watching over it very closely. I live just a couple of blocks from it, and I totally agree with you. If it appears that rentals begin to overtake public time, then I think we need to revisit and maybe look at suggestion that like Brad had a moment ago, and I totally agree with you. Anyone else? Yes.
Bob Gardner, Marina Bay. My suggestion would be to have standard times for the public. If you are going to lease it, at least the public will know when they can use it and when it's not open. If you had standard times, something to think about. Thank you.
You want to respond?
Yes, that was one of the things that we thought seriously about. Some of the people in the room thought, well, mom, dad both want to be there for the birthday party, but they both may not be able to be there at 12, but they both can be there at 4 o'clock. So what we want to do, and Ms. Tender's correct, and the mayor's correct, and you're correct, Mr. John, you're correct, is we had to start somewhere, and as we watch this, our intent is to revise it and make it work for everybody.
Okay, anything else? Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
I have to say no.
Okay.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. So stands approved. Moving on to item number 17. This is discussion and review of city ordinances, and I believe Commissioner Tender asked to have this placed on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. What I wanted to bring to the board tonight was the possibility of creating a committee, if you will, an oversight committee or something, to take a look at the ordinances. I don't care how we create that committee, whether each board member selects one member or however you want to do it, but give it to the residents for a few months and let them bring it back to the commission to look at the charter changes that they would like to see. Now, our attorney told me tonight we would have to have those changes back by January because for the February deadline so that they could be put on the ballot in April, any charter changes that we wanted to make. But in my feeling about it is that if we selected some hardworking people and they met twice a month, they could bring back to us at least 5 or 6, depending on the discussion and the ordinances that they, or the charter things that they look at. At least we would have something to put on the ballot in April for our residents to vote on. There are some, to me, that are so obvious that need to be changed. It shouldn't take a 2-hour or 3-hour discussion, and then there will be some that'll be a lot more difficult. I just feel like if we formed a committee to bring it back to us, it would cut down on our time, obviously, and having more than 2 or 3 workshops to have it done. And I just want to know how the board felt about that.
I'm hearing you use 2 different words. I'm hearing city ordinances, and then I'm hearing charter.
I mean charter, sorry.
Okay, well, on our agenda now we're saying review of city ordinances. So you...
Okay. I want to address the charter because I think that the charter overrides ordinances.
So you're wanting to discuss and review a committee to look at revising the city charter, is that?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to change the wording of item number 17 from city ordinances to city charter? Because it's not correct the way it's written. It's not what she intended.
I move we change it.
Okay, Commissioner Tenders made a motion that the item be changed to discussion and review of the city charter. Is there a second? You're not getting a second.
Can I say something else?
Yes, you may.
I brought this up because it's Mr. Walker brought it up, and I agree with him completely, and I think there are a lot of other citizens that feel that there's a lot in our charter that needs to be brought up to date, and I just have to say I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want it brought up to date. What is the agenda or what is the reason not wanting to bring our charter up to date?
I don't mind weighing in at all. When I saw discussion and review of city ordinances, I was okay with that. I think there are some city ordinances, and in fact, I would like to see us add some city ordinances. There's one right now I'd like to see us put some teeth in. It's a small ordinance, but it's an important one. I'd like to see something, some sort of fine for people who don't clean up after pets in our parks. You know, we've provided every amenity for people, and it sounds like a small thing, but it can become a large thing. Almost everyone has a family pet, and if people aren't polite and you know, careful and look after their fellow human beings, then we all have to suffer, and I just don't like it. So I can see, you know, ordinances. I would certainly entertain looking at city ordinances. There's actually one that I can think of, I won't bring up right now, that I wouldn't mind revisiting. But as far as the charter, I personally feel very strongly about the city charter. I think it was a well-written document. It doesn't personally offend me that the word she is not used in it. You know, the Bible that I read uses he. It doesn't offend me. I mean, I know that, you know, I mean, that doesn't offend me personally. There may be other people who feel differently, but as far as a discussion review of individual city ordinances, I'd be all about that. But no, I wouldn't be in favor of revisiting the city charter. I think it's a well-written document. It was well thought out, and I'm pretty happy with it. So.
Okay. Well, like, and many people know, the reason I even ran for office was because of the sign ordinance, okay, which still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. But there are so many like that.
But again, an ordinance.
That's an ordinance. You're right.
I don't mind looking at ordinances.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
So, And I don't mean that to sound like I'm being
No, I agree.
critical at all. I don't mind reviewing ordinances. I just don't have a passion about changing the charter.
Okay.
Did anybody else on the commission have a comment? None? I guess not.
Okay. So
We're almost to public commentary. One moment. So
I'm done.
you're done?
Mayor, just for
Sure, everything? Anyone else on the
just for
board?
rule of order, we don't have a second.
I understand that you don't have a second, but I still, as the chairperson, if someone wants to make a comment from the public, I'm going to give them that opportunity. We have former Mayor Kelly who'd like to make a comment. I'd love to give you that opportunity, Mayor Kelly.
I'm not an attorney, but I'd certainly like to say that when a motion is made and you don't get a second, it's dead.
Well, I didn't invite you to the podium
one
to
else
censure me, Mr. Kelly.
well-
If you'd like to make a comment, I'll let you do that. Did you have a comment to make?
Yes, because this is the second time I've sat here and watched this happen, where someone failed to give a second on a motion.
I gave you a chance to speak, so now I'm done. If you would please be seated. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm just saying that.
Please be seated, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Thank you, Mr. Tinder, for mentioning my name on that one. It is a sore subject. It is a sore subject because the charter has not been visited in a long, long time. And I pointed out 3 incidences in the charter that are inconsistent. There are just many more. But you have to remember, I pointed out the operational chart of this city. It is not and does not start with the commissioners. It starts and does not go into the city manager. It starts with the citizens. The charter is a citizens' document. It is their document. They should have a voice in updating it, just like the state does every 10 years. They do that purposely because there are things in the Constitution, in the charter, that are outdated. It's not a housekeeping exercise, not he or she. That, yes, that's interesting, but it's not a housekeeping exercise. It's a legal document that teaches you how the citizens want their city run. And I believe strongly that you should visit this. Just visit it. A bipartisan committee, similar to what the state does, made up of people that have ideas for the future and to correct some things from the past.
Okay.
I really think you should look at it.
And I appreciate your comments as well. And if I begin to get a large number of people who feel that same way and bring it forward to this commission, then I would certainly, be willing to look at changing my opinion and listening. But right now, I'm not hearing that from a lot of people. And I would like to say one other thing, that the fact that I allow the citizens to comment on something that one of the commissioners brings up, whether it gets a second or not, is something that I will continue to do. The citizens have a right to voice their opinion. I will never, ever silence anyone when they want to get up and speak on something, whether or not this commission has acted on it or not. So that's just the way I'm going to operate. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak about what Commissioner Tinder brought up tonight?
Mayor, I'll go ahead and speak to it since we're discussing it.
Okay.
I'm opposed to changing it on the agenda from ordinance to charter simply because I'm a big believer on what we advertise is what we should discuss. Second, if we're going to talk about changing the charter, I'm not opposed to that at all. I would just say that we would want to workshop it ourselves, and then if we were to do a subcommittee, and if we wanted to make any changes, I would just suggest that we aim for like a primary of a presidential primary, only so that we capture the greatest number of people that would have the opportunity to vote on it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I would also mention that what I asked for just to change the semantics of the item was the same thing I'd asked for on item 16 that everyone approved. It was a mistake in her part. It was a word she had not intended to use. Her intent was one thing and the word said something else, so I don't really think that was out of line. Moving on to item number 18, which is approval for a half-day closure of City Hall's customer service utilities to move to the new customer service center located at 809 Ohio Avenue on Friday. And I believe that date, another item on the agenda, but I believe that this date is going to have to be changed after my discussion with Mr. White because of utility problems, I believe, with out of control of the city.
Out of control city with porting over some numbers, unfortunately. However, it should be resolved in the next week or so. Staff would like to recommend either a half. We put down a half a day, but sometimes we cannot get everything done. We almost would like to have a whole day after I go back and look at it to get everybody moved over. And to refresh your memory, that'll be everyone up front that takes bills, answers the phone, those items, those people, as well as all code enforcement, CRA, economic development, planning and permitting, all of those individuals as well. So it's a big move. We're planning already to try to pre-do a lot of moving, but there's still a lot that they have to get ready back for business.
So what day are you looking for?
I got a meeting tomorrow with the people, so I'm hoping I can get a date within the next 2 weeks, and it'd be one of the Fridays.
Okay.
And I had a discussion with Mr. White about this, and I told him that I totally agreed that it would be probably needed for all of these employees to have an entire day. They're moving a huge operation from the City Hall to the new service center next door, which is going to be a great, just a wonderful amenity for the citizens. I think, and he agreed with me, we can probably find a way to leave one employee at City Hall for emergencies, for if someone needs attention to utilities or whatever, and then that would leave the rest of the staff on the Friday that he chooses to be able to get everything done in that one day and be ready to move on Monday morning with the new building. So I certainly don't have a problem with that. If anyone else would like to comment, I would ask for that at this time.
Well, the only thing, do we just, for this particular item, do we need to table it and bring it back at the next meeting, or do you want us to formulate a motion that fits what you need?
There's a possibility we'll be moved before the next meeting.
Ah, okay. So can you describe what kind of motion you're looking for? So
I think he's looking for the commission to approve a full day of closure for them to move from one building to the other, and he's saying he'll do it on a Friday, and that he would well advertise this to the citizens. So I think maybe just the next available Friday is what he's looking for our approval, is my understanding.
So I'd like to make a motion. I make a motion that the city manager chooses whatever Friday that you want in the month of August to move to the service center, that you will advertise before the move takes place, and then you go ahead and proceed with your move.
Thank you.
And is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board? Is there any discussion or objection from the public? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 19, before I adjourned, I just wanted to remind you of just a couple of things, and I think city manager has something as well. Pardon me? I didn't call the roll. Thank you for reminding me. Mr. White, would you please call the roll on number 18? Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. White. Moving on to number 19. Before I adjourn, remember tomorrow morning there's going to be a great economic announcement for Lynn Haven at 10 o'clock. I hope you can all come out. It's going to be a nice celebration. Next Wednesday, August the 1st, is the grand opening of our first splash pad, if all goes well. Greg Kidwell, thank you so much for all that you've done to make this happen. And then on the 31st, from 8 a.m. until 12 noon, the commission will be in a visioning workshop, and the public is invited to attend. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to add before I adjourn? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.